as someone who has a chronic condition that may even have been triggered by stress, how stressful it can be to have someone tell you that you need to relax. Sometimes that can just feel like another thing on your to-do list. Like you just need to find time to meditate. Like, oh, great, I'll check my schedule.
Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 118 of the Healthy Skin Show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the connections between chronic skin problems and hair loss, with hidden causes that no one really talks about. It's not uncommon for clients who have rashes that end up on the scalp or somewhere on their body, and it starts to basically turn into hair loss, and they don't understand what's happening. This is a great conversation for you. Since today's conversation went a tad long, I want to dive straight in to the interview. That way you can get it all in. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I've got a good friend of mine today to join us to talk about something that's a little bit aside from skin issues, but this can happen as the result of skin issues. And I'm oftentimes asked about hair loss. What do you do when you've had chronic skin issues in areas where, like your face or the head of your hair, where you have hair, you want hair, but now it's not growing back as a result of all the damage that has happened because of eczema or psoriasis or whatever else you may have going on in those areas? My guest today is Britt Reuter. She has a master's degree in nutrition from the University of Bridgeport, and she is the author of the eBook, Girl's Guide to Reversing Hair Loss. It was after years of struggling with her own chronic illness that Britt was first introduced to functional medicine, and she quickly realized that functional medicine has the potential to revolutionize how we approach wellness by guiding people to uncover hidden sources of inflammation. It's Britt's personal experience coupled with her formal training that empowers her to help women overcome the symptoms they feel stuck with so that they can get back to living their best life. Britt lives and works in the Boston area, consulting with women online via webcam. Britt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, here's the first thing that everybody wants to know. Why exactly was hair loss something that was of interest to you?
Right. Yeah. So about a year ago, I actually started noticing a trend with clients that I was working with. And although they came to me for support and guidance on so many different issues, quite a number of them shared a common concern. They were young women and they were experiencing abnormal and unexplained hair loss. So they would be like brushing their hair and the brush would be full. They'd be leaving clumps behind in the shower. Some of them, it was so severe that they were actually resorting to wearing wigs or toppers because it was so noticeable. They're getting like patchy, spots of hair loss. And in listening to these women tell me just how hard they were finding it to cope with their hair loss emotionally, how they may have felt so much shame, how betrayed by their bodies they were. I actually heard a lot of my own story and what they were saying to me. So we mentioned this a little bit in the intro, but a little bit about my background. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune thyroid condition at a very young age. And just like these women who were telling me that they were doing everything right, all of the healthy diets, the scalp treatments, the supplements, the exercise, meditation, like everything, you name it, they're doing everything right and they're still not getting the results that they want. That's exactly where I had been at certain points in my health journey, literally just like at my wit's end. So I felt like, after having these clients that were coming to me struggling with this terrible symptom, that I really needed to just get in there, dig into the research and help them because I heard so much of my own story.
Yeah. And I think one of the complicated pieces to this with at least the hair loss skin issue is that it can be difficult to use the products on your scalp, for example. If you've got skin problems on the scalp and then you're supposed to use these creams and lotions and other commercial products, but you've got skin that's really damaged, you're going to be probably very, I don't know, I wouldn't want to put that on my scalp, a broken skin. But why exactly, if somebody has considered that, why might those options not necessarily work?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And you know what I noticed too is that when I was working with these clients, or I'm talking, to women online that are experiencing severe hair loss, they have actually tried everything. And I'm sure that you hear that all the time with your skincare clients as well, where, obviously you're desperate for a solution and you'll try, all of the drugstore stuff, all of the infomercial stuff, and they just really don't ever seem to live up to the promises, all of the hype. And honestly, the reason for that is because none of those products do anything to address the root cause of why that's happening. It's a very, a surface level symptom based approach where, you're just, trying to put a Band-Aid on it, so to speak. So, that's honestly why I don't expect any of those sorts of products to deliver results, because that underlying issue is still there, provoking the hair loss, provoking the skin rashes.
And I want to assume too, there's probably a lot of chemicals in these products that
Great point.
Our skin is so porous. It's a barrier, but it also has the capacity to unfortunately absorb chemicals and all xenohormones and all sorts of things. And I would assume, I've never had to use those products, but I would assume they're probably pretty loaded with things that even if your skin wasn't unbroken, you might be wary to actually apply to the skin.
Right. Like they say that your skin is the largest organ, right? And everything that you put on your skin is likely getting absorbed into your body. One common factor driving hair loss is hormone imbalances. And when we look at the way that a lot of these toxic products behave, they're actually mimicking hormones. So you could be potentially exacerbating hormonal hair loss, or exacerbating even skin conditions that are related to hormone imbalances. So you think that you're helping yourself out by applying this product, but you're actually just contributing to the issue.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you talk a lot about there's different types of hair. Like you've kind of created this idea that there's different buckets or types of hair loss that to really help orient people. And maybe for someone who hasn't quite figured out what their root causes are for their skin, this could potentially help them understand the skin problem via the hair issue. So would you mind talking a little bit, like what are the hair loss types that you've identified? And then, where do you see overlap with the skin rash piece?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So the hair loss types that I identified, and people can be more than one of these. So, you may find that you're having, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe all of them are affecting the way that your hair grows, but it's nutritional, stress, hormonal, and inflammatory. And those are just super high level, right? But I think underneath them, you find that there's these issues that are interrupting a normal hair growth process, maybe interrupting healthy skin. So the biggest overlaps that I see in between hair loss and skin rashes like eczema and psoriasis, number one, autoimmune. So we know that psoriasis is an autoimmune condition. Eczema is also likely an autoimmune condition. There's more and more evidence supporting that. And when you have one autoimmune condition, you're more likely to develop another. They tend to sort of cluster like that. And so, when we think about autoimmune hair loss, alopecia areata, if someone is, say, suffering with eczema, they're so much more likely to also experience that autoimmune hair loss. And when we see something, autoimmune is a chronic inflammatory disease. So when we're presented with chronic inflammation, it only makes sense to go searching for the root cause of that inflammation. And between, either a skin rash or hair loss, you're going to see a lot of overlap in those root causes. So it really just comes down to that bioindividuality that I know you like to talk about. So let's say that you and I are both exposed to the same toxin. That's our root cause. But for you, maybe it presents as eczema. And for me, maybe it presents as hair loss. So important to dig into what those individual root causes are, because how they manifest from person to person is going to be different. It's not as though if you're exposed to mold, you're always going to have hair loss. It could be any number of things. It could be autoimmune thyroid. It could be hair loss. It could be eczema or rheumatoid arthritis or any number of things. So yeah, you'll definitely see a lot of overlap there between autoimmune skin conditions and autoimmune hair loss.
And so with those hair loss types, so nutritional, what are some thoughts on that for someone who's listening to that? Does that mean that they just need to take more, it's like, what do I just take some supplements? Or is there something specific that you like to point toward when there's a nutritional root cause that's driving the hair loss?
So nutritional, I like to say, is sort of a blanket category for a couple different things. So number one, it could be poor diet. It could be that you're under eating. Maybe you're not eating a very good diet that has varied foods in it. Maybe you're struggling with gut inflammation, so you're not actually absorbing the foods that you eat. I see that a lot, like gut issues all the time. And then also food sensitivities, that can be another thing. And that's sort of a symptom, spiraling out of that gut inflammation. So nutritionally, it doesn't seem like there's any one specific nutrient that is going to be true for everyone. Some people, I'm sure anyone struggling with hair loss has already thought of taking biotin, has already thought of taking iron. And it's true that some people may be low iron, may be low biotin, but I think it's really important, more than just reaching for another supplement, to ask, why am I deficient in iron? Am I having, hormonal imbalances that's causing me to have a really heavy period? Am I celiac? That is, often associated with iron deficiency. Or, even biotin. That's, if you're having inadequate digestion, low stomach acid, you're not going to be able to break down the foods that have biotin in order to absorb that. So it's definitely not going to be the same for everyone. And, even at a surface level, a lot of people find that just taking iron or just taking biotin isn't enough to address their hair loss.
Yeah. And one of the neat things is, like, to look at your iron levels is really easy. That's like such an easy one. And that's probably, I don't know, from when I've talked to doctors, a lot of times they're like, the first thing I always want to check is iron, because it's the easiest to look at. It's the easiest one to go after with very simple labs, which most of the time are covered by insurance, by the way. So you can always ask your doctor for a full iron panel, and also add on ferritin. That's pretty good. But like for all of those others, I love the organic. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I love the organic comprehensive panel from Genova to look at organic acids that tell us a lot about the nutrition. And biotin certainly is listed as one of the organic acids on there. Well, the organic acid correlates with biotin status. So any other suggestions or thoughts on that, or
on testing? Yeah. So I'd say when you suspect that there's nutrient deficiencies, I like the Genova test too. Nutrival is one of theirs that I like. Also, the ion test is really great. So one thing that I find under the nutrition umbrella too is if you're struggling with concurrent toxicities, let's say that you have some heavy metal toxicities or some gut dysbiosis, it may be that you're not able to, those are competing for uptake with the nutrients. So maybe you're eating a great diet, maybe you're even taking these supplements, but you're struggling with mercury toxicity. That's also going to show up on some of these tests, like for example, the ion test. So it's kind of nice to just get that whole big package. And I think you made a good point too, that those tests look at the different biochemical pathways. They're going to be way more sensitive than just testing plain old serum levels of these vitamins. So they're super early indicators of inadequacy.
Yeah. And that's, you actually bring up a really good point too, which I didn't even think of, is heavy metals can be a major factor here. And that is a great point, because for somebody who's like, oh, wait, I'm just going to go and ask my doctor to find out what my mercury level is. Because think about it. We've heard about Flint, Michigan. There's lead in the water, right? People have these mercury amalgams from their fillings, and they get nervous about that. And they start thinking that the heavy metals are the issue. Just so everybody knows, you getting it tested in your blood is actually not it's not very helpful way to know what your heavy metal burden is. So you really need to do like a urine chelation with your doctor, and working with a medical practitioner on that as my personal preference. What about, do you have any thoughts on like hair analysis testing? Some people ask that, or they might be even thinking about it like, oh, that's easy. I'll just test my hair and see what's in it and what's deficient. And obviously my hair will tell me what the problem is. Any thoughts?
I don't personally use that in my practice. I feel like, some people, some colleagues of mine really swear by that and they use it. I feel like the jury's still out on how reliable it is. And if you're someone that chemically treats your hair, and a lot of our products now have aluminum in them, I just feel like there's so many different, factors. Likely the hair follicle is not going to be pure. It's not going to be necessarily very reliable to tell you what's going on inside your body.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think there's a lot of questions around, well, even too, like as you're walking around, there's tons of pollutants in our air that we can't see. And so depending on what you wash your hair with, the residues from water, all sorts of things can cloud the sample. And on top of it, I just haven't seen a whole lot of scientific validity around those, especially the ones where they're like then telling you what food you're supposed to. Not really sure. I just don't think that's really valid and helpful. So I think it's better, like you're suggesting, to look within instead of trying to do everything on a superficial level. For the hormonal type, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of play off what we were just talking about too with the testing. So I really love Dutch. They have great tests there that are super sensitive to picking up on different hormone imbalances. And the hair growth process is a very hormone sensitive process. Like our hair follicles will definitely pick up on hormone imbalances. So there's something that people may be familiar with, androgenic alopecia, which is basically androgens are masculinizing hormones. So think like testosterone, and women need them in small amounts. And so it might not be until they become imbalanced that you start noticing issues. But when you get too much of those androgens, those masculinizing hormones, it can, what it does is it prolongs the rest phase of the hair growth cycle. So you have less growing, more resting, which is going to manifest as thin, sparsely distributed hair. And I think that is got to be way up there for one of the top causes that I see root causes of hair loss in women. So when we think about sources of androgens, I already talked about how, some of our personal care products may not be doing us any favors in the hormone department, maybe disrupting our hormones. So that could potentially, be something that's at play here. But I like to look at it as typically one of three things. Excess androgens can come from your ovaries, like when you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. It can come from our adrenal glands, which normally do contribute some of our androgens. But when we're in that chronic fight-flight mode, chronic stress, it's actually going to produce quite a bit more. So from our adrenal glands, and then also hormonal birth control. I see that quite a bit too. A lot of hormonal birth control can have very potent androgens in it that disrupt our own natural hormones and can manifest as hair loss or skin issues.
That is super interesting. And yeah, I agree. The Dutch test is I think that's like my go-to. I think that's a lot of people in the functional world go-to test for hormones. And, obviously everybody can go check out Dr. Carrie Jones's talk as well to hear a little bit more about that. All right. So we have nutritional, we have hormonal, we have, inflammatory. We kind of touched on that a little bit, but with the skin issues, the inflammation piece is such a big piece. And then plus if you're scratching, creating that external inflammation. As a result. Any additional thoughts you would want to add to that bucket?
Yeah, so under inflammatory, I like to think of that as also including toxins. So we talked a little bit about the heavy metals, but it could also be mold. It could be organotoxins. So like pesticides, for example, toxic beauty products, products in your home, like the kind of cleaners that you're using, maybe, that fragrant spray that people use all over their homes. That's a toxin. So that can contribute to hair loss for sure. And then infections too. And infections broad, definitely not limited to, just gut dysbiosis. It could also mean viruses or parasites. So you really got to dig into some of that. Some of that's, blood work with your doctor. Sometimes it's a stool test. I think a lot of times you'll see those things pop up that way. And then obviously when you're having toxins in your body when you're having these infections, it's going to contribute to nutrient imbalances. It's going to contribute to hormone imbalances. It might even push your adrenals into overdrive. So you can kind of see like how all of these different hair loss types can kind of compound. And that's why I'm never surprised to see someone, raising their hand and being like, I think that I'm nutritional and stress, or, inflammatory and hormonal. They're going to overlap.
And so with that being said, I like that you brought this up, that there's overlap. With the stress piece, a lot of times when you go to the doctors, especially with like the skin stuff, and even I would argue too with hair loss, it's very stressful in and of itself. The conditions are very stressful. They create stress because of the physical pain that sometimes people are in with skin issues, or the stress that we perceive because of societal norms, that we don't look the way that we or everyone else that maybe expects us to, and we're treated different or stared at. There's so many things that can generate stress. And you go to the doctor and they're like, you're just stressed. We'll give you an antidepressant. It's just like stress is being used as an excuse to kind of blow off the concern that you have. So why in this particular instance, if stress is a factor, why, in your view, should we take stress so seriously?
Yeah, and so stress is really serious, right? So it's a whole hormone cascade. It's going to affect, how well even your blood glucose is managed by your insulin. It's going to affect, our female hormone cycle. So it is really important, and it depletes your body of important nutrients as well. And I completely understand, as someone who has a chronic condition that may even have been triggered by stress, how stressful it can be to have someone tell you that you need to relax. Sometimes that can just feel like another thing on your to-do list. Like you just need to find time to meditate. Oh great, I'll check my schedule. So it really can be overwhelming. So I have so much empathy, around people who are struggling with stress management. I think that, if you look at what the sources of stress are in your life, sometimes it means reframing things. Sometimes it means learning to delegate things more. Sometimes it means practicing healthy boundaries. But it can also look different than just emotional, or psychological stress. Sometimes it can also be the stress of under-eating and overtraining. I'd say that definitely manifests as hair loss for a lot of women who are, hitting the gym a little too hard and not fueling their bodies appropriately. That's stress to your body. That still feels like, primally that you're running away from the hungry tigers, the same as checking those scary work emails. It's also stressful for your body to not get enough rest, not just like downtime, not just watching Netflix and trying to unwind, but actual sleep. And, in the right sleep environments, that can, really register as stress for your body too. And so can poor nutrition. Not giving your body the nutrients that it needs, the variety in its diet, in your diet that it needs, being on too restrictive of a diet maybe can even register as stress. So it's very varied for everyone. Everyone's going to be different, but, really I just look at it as taking an opportunity to invest in yourself and ask yourself those questions. Where am I experiencing stress, and what can I do that's like an incremental change to get a little bit better there?
And I think this is a good question for people who have been stuck in this position where they're like, I'm really working on things. I want to see my hair grow back. But they get incredibly frustrated because it feels like it takes a really long time. And I know with my nails, when I dealt with that with nails, even though that's a different conversation, but again, it's sort of similar, my nails got messed up from eczema and they took so long to grow back out normal. If somebody does experience this where their hair or they're still in a state where things are falling out, do you have an approximate time frame, assuming everything gets back in check, right? Because that's a big piece here. It's not like you just say, okay, today I'm going to start working on it, and you do one little piece, but you've got 5 things to address. If you get everything correct, how long should someone give it? How long is a hair growth cycle? I think that's what everyone wants to know, right?
Well, it's so hard because everyone's so different, and the level of severity of the inflammation that they're dealing with, like how long they've been struggling with those nutrient deficiencies. So it is completely case by case. I personally wouldn't expect anyone to start seeing, new results much before 60, 90 days. And that's not probably typical, not the same results for everyone. So it can take a really long time. And I understand how painful that can be. I think that something that I've seen is that a lot of women who are struggling with severe hair loss do find some kind of workaround. It might be changing their hairstyle. Maybe they're used to having very long hair and they end up switching it to short hair, or they end up finding, something like a non-permanent hair extension or a wig, or, just something to like help them feel more like themselves, give themselves back that confidence in the meantime. And they find that it's able to help them be a little bit more patient in the process, a little bit more present. And that's not a sign of weakness, like that is just totally, you showing up in the world how you want to. And I think that that's so important. So there's definitely no shame and no guilt in finding those little workarounds while you're working on addressing those deeper issues so that you can actually regrow your thick, beautiful hair.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, because I've had one client who's had this, experienced this, it does, unfortunately, your hair only on average grows a half of an inch every month. Yeah. So that's why people are like, why I want to grow faster? And it's like,
which is something that you don't know until you're desperate to try to regrow your hair, right? Yeah. So, honestly, it's so hard because hair loss, just like skin rashes, you feel that shame and, the stress and all of these emotions that come with that. And so asking people to be patient is so hard. But really what you have to remember is that hair loss and skin issues are a symptom of something deeper going on. It's your body's way of communicating with you. And so by you, treating that as a clue, digging into those root causes of inflammation, you're really like honoring your body and just showing it so much love and attention that it's hungry for. So, be patient with yourself and half an inch in a month. That's tough to hear.
It is. But the thing is, and you know this, and for those of you who are watching who followed me for a while, I'm really big on being honest and giving you realistic timeframes, because I don't like when people say, oh, fix your skin in 2 weeks, or, grow out your hair in 1 month. Like, that's not realistic. It's an unrealistic promise. And many of us have a number of things going on that we have to address that take time. And I just think it's better to give you a realistic picture of what that's going to look like so you can manage your expectations, because it can be really easy in this world to lose hope because things seem to go so slowly. And many of you know that, like, my skin issues, like, I still had flares for 6 months and I just kept going. I don't know why I kept going, but I listened to that inner voice. So, know that it is possible to get your hair to regrow, but you have to start looking internal instead of just these external products. That said, Britt, you have some tips for us, maybe of like some hair care products that may be okay to try or use, or how to maybe take, if you're having some issues and you're concerned, are there any suggestions you have of just how to care for the hair that you have right now in a little bit better way? So that way, as things are growing back in, we're caring for everything.
Cherish those locks. Absolutely. Yes. So, number one is to stop using toxic personal care products. We already talked about how, really disruptive that can be to the hair growth process. So I want to especially stress avoiding products with phthalates, PHTHALATES, little counterintuitive on the spelling there. But if you see, that a product has phthalates in it, that can actually cause a lot of surface level inflammation and increase, inflammation under the scalp and interrupt that hair growth process pretty severely. So I would definitely do that. Downloading the Environmental Working Groups app, it's called the Healthy Living app. That has been such a game changer at my house. And it's great because what you do is you can look up all of your personal care products on there, kind of be a super sleuth and check up on those products, see how they rank. They're going to tell you how toxic they are. And you want to really focus on either ones that they've picked for you as saying, this is healthy, this is non-toxic, or that are at about a 1 or a 2, I think is a great goal. So definitely, helping to get rid of some of those toxic personal care products has got to be number one. And there's a lot of great shampoos and conditioners that don't have these harmful toxins in them. So you can definitely still, wash and condition your hair in a great way, but without the toxins. Second, I like to personally be really nice to my scalp, really nice to my hair. So what I like to do, this is like a little bit of a bedtime ritual that people can try out. So if you take some hemp seed oil or jojoba oil is another good choice. Those are both really nourishing for your skin too, as well as, your follicle and your hair strand. So if you take a little bit of that, and you can actually add some rosemary oil to it, some rosemary essential oil, just a little bit, and work that, just massage it into your scalp. And that helps to, not only nourish with that oil, but then the rosemary oil actually helps to increase circulation. And circulation can be great for helping those hair follicles grow. So, and it's so relaxing, right? So you're combating stress and you're massaging your scalp. So I think that's really nice. And then I also like to use a silk pillowcase. Okay. So a lot of cotton pillowcases or some of those synthetic fibers can be really tough on our hair. So as it's growing out and we're rolling around, it's snapping and breaking the hair, which when you get all that damage, it's going to also make your hair look thin and sparse because you're breaking off those strands. So that's nice. So you do your scalp massage and then you lay down on your really soft pillowcase, and it's just a really nice hair growth promoting bedtime ritual.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to back up a second. So for those who are listening, because I'm also thinking this, wait, all right. So in your hand with the oil thing, you're going to do what? Put maybe a dime size amount of, we'll just say jojoba oil.
I like to add the rosemary oil straight to the bottle, and that's just my hair, because that way, it's less to just play with. But, if you're not ready to commit, that's okay. You could just try to mix it in your palm. Very little, essential oils are so potent. And so you definitely don't want to overdo it with that. And, you don't want it to be strong. It's near your eyes, stinging your eyes. So you want to just go slow, right? You can always add more. You can't ever add less.
So with the bottle, let's just say the bottle is we'll say 4 inches tall. I know that doesn't mean anything to anyone, but you get the point. It's a small bottle. It's not a ginormous bottle. And I assume, is that the size of the bottle you're probably using? Yeah. So how much rosemary, how many drops-ish would you be adding to a bottle like that?
So I actually just added 15, and there wasn't any hard and fast science to that. That's just what I find is the right amount. So I put 15 in there, and if, maybe start out at 10 and then give it a little smell and see if that smells good to you. Okay. And then just try a little bit. Yeah, not more than a quarter size, because personally, I don't want to have oil everywhere. Yeah. So, and just a little bit, and then I work it in between my hands, and then just try to take my fingertips and really massage it into my scalp. You can also have your partner do it in case my husband's listening. Maybe he, just a little scalp massage. I'm just asking for a friend here. That could be even more relaxing than when you do it yourself.
Yeah. Well, it sounds too, if you were just going to give this a shot, it would be probably maybe a quarter size amount of oil in your palm and one drop.
I think that would probably be good if you're just going to mix it in your palm like that.
Thinning it out. Perfect. I love the fact that I'm able to kind of pull out these little nuggets and get them for people, because I'm sitting here going, wait, what does that look like? And I'm thinking other people are probably thinking that too. So I'm really glad that we were able to sort that out. Those are awesome tips, and I really appreciate you being here. And then for anybody listening and you want to dive deeper into this whole thing of what's your hair type, and you have a concern about hair loss, or maybe you know somebody that does, Britt, you have a what's your hair loss type e-guide. It's really a quiz, and then you have a bunch of really great information associated with that. And we'll put the link beneath this along with your website. That way people can go and check that out. It's a really cool guide, everybody. And Britt also has some great content over on her social media platforms as well. So if you don't follow her, definitely do that. Britt, thank you so much for joining us here and sharing this. I know, again, it's a little bit of an aside, but the scalp and everywhere we want hair. when you lose it, you're like, oh man, this stinks. So I'm so appreciative that you were willing to spend the time with us and share all these nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I hope that you found this conversation as interesting as I did, because hair loss is one of those things that can really, truly impact your level of confidence. And I felt that it was such a great topic to cover, considering that so many of my clients have complained about this exact issue. All of the links and resources that we discussed today can be found in this episode's show notes over at skinterrupt.com/118. If you've got any questions or concerns, head on over there and leave a comment. That way we can keep the conversation going. And of course, I need your help in sharing what you find valuable about the show. So please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Healthy Skin Show. That way the next episode lands on your mobile device without you having to do a thing. And if you know someone who is really frustrated as their hair is thinning or they've experienced a lot of hair loss, please share this episode with them. Hair loss can be a real source of shame and frustration for many people out there. And that's why I ask you to share, because perhaps somebody listening to this and thinking that there is no hope realizes that there could be avenues that they have yet to explore. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.